072 037 087.
Madam Deputy Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodigheid wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele ilizwi letu nabantu balo, umesele ukulunga kipondu letu. Nkosi sikelele i Afrika, klina bantwana bayo, kokela inkokeli zayo, inike ukolo i Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Good afternoon, honourable members, guests, and the media. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind the members about some of the logistical arrangements to the sitting for today. As we have conducted sittings via our hybrid means, please to ensure, and I do understand and empathise that due to the rolling blackouts that we are having difficulty with connection, but that our honourable members online can check that their connection is intact for the sitting, in specifically for those that will be speaking into the record. I also note that we have our IT on standby should we need to dial you in. And please, honourable members, to ensure that your microphones are muted. We are also finding that those of you with new devices, you can actually mute your speaking device or your microphone and not realize that your microphone as an attachment is muted, but your speaker is not. So please just make sure that when you need to speak, all of your devices are not muted. And then to remind you that you can use language translation as on a second device. And finally, as ruled by the presiding officer in the sitting of the House on the 23rd of April 2020 via Microsoft Teams, no interjection shall be permitted during the debate. In this regard, I also wish to draw the attention of the honourable members to Rule 40 of the Standing Rules. I recognise the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the debate be given precedence.
Are there any objections to the motion? No objections? Agreed to. I will now deal with the subject for discussion in the name of Honourable Mackenzie as printed on the order paper. I recognise the Honourable Member. My apologies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our first debater is Honourable Allen.
My apologies. There is an error. Apologies. Thank you, Chief Whip. Honourable Allen.
Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker. I trust that I'm audible.
Yes.
You are audible. You may proceed.
Deputy Speaker, allow me to provide a brief outline that paints a picture of the current status of national delivery Firstly, over 7 million people do not have jobs in our country. Secondly, as justice is delayed by a backlog of over 100,000 unprocessed Western Cape DNA samples, it is quite frankly also denied. In terms of transport, Deputy Speaker, the central line in our city that many rely on in order to get to their desperately held employment opportunities is simply unreliable or entirely absent. Then there is a South African proverb that says, we regret to inform you that load shedding stage 4 will be implemented from 12 p.m. today until Sunday evening. Deputy Speaker, the topic in the name of Honourable Mackenzie couldn't be debated at a more appropriate time. We must, with urgency, constructively discuss the impact in the Western Cape of the national government's failure to keep the lights on, to keep us safe, and to keep our jobs. As of today, we are not merely experiencing load shedding, but rolling blackouts across the country and in our province. It should never be forgotten that the very people who caused the mess, the people who indulged in corruption, and the people who created the deep crisis that we are experiencing at this very moment come from and were protected by our national government under ANC rule. Deputy Speaker, our patience is up. The DA has consistently, over a period of more than 15 years, highlighted the issues around cadre deployment, state capture, and the ANC's internal culture of corruption against the greater need to create jobs, capacitate the safety services, root out maladministration and looting of PRASA, and at the very least, keep the lights on. But with every enormous failure or scandal, the president appears to be shocked. Deputy Speaker, our national president, President Ramaphosa, was shocked when he took a metro rail train. Speaker, the carriage broke down and the journey was delayed, and the president was 2 hours late for his next engagement. When he was asked about it, and I quote, he said, "I was shocked." If the president is also shocked on the real state of SAPS and unemployment in South Africa, then he must obviously reside beyond the borders of this republic. But Deputy Speaker, transportation is key to the development of any country. But after 27 years of ANC governance, the dream of an affordable, integrated system is a pipe dream. Instead of exerting political will to the pioneering policy papers presented, the ANC abandoned every realistic macroeconomic policy in mid-air. Through its inconsistency, Deputy Speaker, and lack of leadership, PRASA alone received 800 million, which grew to 5 billion in 2 years, with close to nothing to show. We still have a broken rail system. And Deputy Speaker, we also argue that the abandonment of sound policies is why we have a dynamic youthful population, yet unprecedented youth unemployment. Deputy Speaker, may we consider the following. 2 days ago, the Standing Committee on Community Safety undertook an oversight visit to the SAPS Forensic Science Lab in Cape Town, where it was revealed that the DNA backlog now stands at a new total of over 100,000 samples. This is a 30% increase, Deputy Speaker, since December last year, when 74,700 unprocessed samples were recorded. And the reason behind the significant increase in the backlog is simple. It's substandard administration, and again, a sheer lack of will from national leadership. But Deputy Speaker, if the existing challenges within the human resources management, the delivery of consumables, broken equipment, and facilities management, along with inefficiencies in the central track and trace system are overcome, SAPS claimed that it would be able to process 2,000 DNA samples per day. Instead of tying up these loose ends, the National Minister of Police watches how 1.6 billion rand is lost in SAPS PPE procurement flows. But Deputy Speaker, we do things differently in the Western Cape because we seek to serve the people. The Department of Community Safety conduct tremendous work towards preventing crime and violence through the work of the youth safety ambassadors. area-based teams to integrate crime interventions via the deployment of additional law enforcement officers in all the areas where it matters most. And Deputy Speaker, it is indeed the provincial government led by the DA that continues to stretch the limits of its oversight mandate to promote a whole of society approach to community safety to buffer the inefficiencies of SAPS in the Western Cape. In closing, Deputy Speaker, I appreciate that Member Mackenzie has tabled this important debate today. The impact of national failures is beyond belief, ranging from justice being delayed to justice being denied, to calling SAPS for assistance and not knowing if the phone will be picked up, or if the phone is picked up, that the police van will actually arrive. Seeing that 1,200 SAPS vehicles are to commuters, Deputy Speaker, due to overcrowded and delayed metro rail trains, to forking out more money as commuters with monthly train tickets have to use alternative transport due to the poor service of metro rail under the leadership of the national government. Deputy Speaker, through you to the residents of the Western Cape and South Africa, I wish to say later this year, we will all have an opportunity to use our power during the local government elections. May we vote for a party that delivers, and that party is the Democratic Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise the Honourable Kama.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, allow me to open with this quote from Aldai E. Stevenson, the 23rd Vice President of the United States, when he said, I quote, "A hypocrite is the kind of politician who would cut down a redwood tree, then mount the stump and make a speech for conservation." It's as if he was sitting somewhere in the chamber listening to DA hypocrisy and half-truths when he uttered these words. While this provincial government wants to portray itself as paragons of morality, justice, and good governance on the one hand, it has failed to do a basic thing like protecting a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace. Instead, it protects the perpetrator while the victim is left suffering from depression and anxiety. The hypocrisy goes beyond the DA wanting to speak with authority on the issues of safety, while its policies have meant that women and children in the township informal settlements are raped and murdered when they go to toilets at night. The DA government in the province is one that talks too much with no action. It is a party of all talk and spin and no substance. While the DA is grandstanding and playing to the gallery in this debate, other provinces and municipalities are forging ahead with plans to improve electricity supply. The city of Johannesburg announced last week that it will spend over 3.8 billion in investment to the solar and gas-fired power, as well as a battery storage to improve its electricity supply. The municipality has already started with plans to issue a request for information for the construction of a 150 megawatt solar plant, a 50 megawatt of rooftop solar panels, and the refurbishment of an ideal gas-fired plant that could generate 20 megawatts in September. It will also seek information for the installation of 100 megawatts of battery storage. In addition to this, the municipality plans to produce solar energy from the rooftops of its own buildings and purchase some battery storage. 78 million has been set aside for that in the next financial year. The municipality is even prepared to lease land around disused mines to implement lease these mines to independent power producers to set up solar plants. Deputy Speaker, that is an example of a government that is serious about addressing the energy crisis, and not one that uses every challenge for political point scoring. The DA has made the loudest noise calling for powers of the energy department to be devolved to provinces and the monopoly of ESCOM to be broken. Yet it has failed to implement its own projects to mitigate the impact of load shedding. In 2017 State of the Province address, the then Premier Helen Zille stated that her government target is to enable independent generation of 135 megawatts through solar panel installations by 2020. While in 2021, how many megawatts have been generated. In the same SOPA, she announced that the launch of the rooftop PV campaign to encourage businesses to switch to solar, stay on the grid, and save on their electricity bill. She added that the government would install PV in 5 Western Cape government buildings. Had these initiatives been fully implemented, the province would now have an alternative source or have alternative sources of power. But again, the DA has failed. What happened to the agri-worker electrification project that was announced by Zille in 2014 and piloted by MEC Bredel in 2016 with the aim to make electricity available directly to agri-workers? The MEC said the initiative will be rolled out across the province. This government has failed the farm workers. 5 years after that project was piloted, farm workers are still at the mercy of farmers who remain the only persons that can purchase electricity from vendors. Workers who want to protest or join unions are not given electricity up until they stop the protest. Why is the DA not talking about such challenges affecting people in the province where it governs and has powers to address them? It can only be hypocrisy. Speaker, I want to point out that the crime situation in the Western Cape differs significantly between the economically disadvantaged and the more affluent. Addressing this disparity is a key policy challenge that has been deliberately ignored by this DA government. For several years, we've been arguing that environmental design and improvements to the physical environment, such as improved lighting, can augment a government's effort to improve safety in high crime hotspot areas. International studies found that increased levels of lighting leads to reduction in overall index crimes, such as murder, robbery, and aggravated assault. Crime in hotspot areas is not caused by load shedding, but it is the deliberate decision by the DA government not to invest in making the physical environment less conducive to crime by installing street lights, CCTV cameras, and improving accessibility, especially in informal settlements. The Premier must use part of the safety plan budget to invest in making the physical environment less conducive to crime. Instead of bragging about building houses with stoops, this government should consider including outside lighting in the new houses. The debate really exposes the DA's hypocrisy and double standards. A DA that is willing to break barriers for the rich while ignoring the calls to create a safer environment for the poor. The the dark areas which are not accessible in our areas will remain unsafe even if load shedding were to end tomorrow because there are no lights. It's just logic. You need, you can have electricity, but if you do not have lights, there won't be any lighting. Hannah Arendt warned us about hypocrites when he said, only crime and the criminal, it is true, confront us with perplexity of radical evil, but only the hypocrite is really rotten to the core. The hypocrite in the Western Cape is the DA, which calls our leaders of the ANC who are facing allegations of corruption to step down while defending councillors of the DA who are out on bail for corruption and money laundering. Hypocrite in the Western Cape is a DA that only wants black votes but is not prepared to change their living conditions, but only gives them food parcels which they think will sway their votes, as confirmed by their DA discharged child soldier Angus Mackenzie. Hypocrite in the Western Cape is a DA which uses jobs in this debate that are lost, apparently lost due to the current energy crisis, to attack the national government when it spends nothing out of the 1 billion safety plan to create jobs. The DA that has been ignoring calls in this very same house by the ANC when we said that 1,000 boots on the ground will not solve crime in the Western Cape and will not have any murder rate it doesn't matter in how many years. But what we need is an intervention in the economic challenges of our areas, where young people are readily available to be recruited by gangs, to be part of gangs for them to earn a living. The DA is the lie, and lies have short legs. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Now recognise Honourable Wingham.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's undeniable that successive ANC governments have failed South Africans when it comes to electricity. Promises have been made as far back as 2007 when South Africans were first plunged into darkness. 14 years later, we're at stage 4 load shedding. In 2008, Thabo Mbeki said government was taking collective responsibility for their failure to ignore a decade worth of warnings that urgent action was needed at Eskom. But fast forward to today, our lights are out more often and government is missing in action. An Eskom war room was established and headed by then Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa to oversee the turnaround of the state power utility. In 2015, he said, "We are taking decisive action to reduce the need for load shedding and secure our energy supply into the future." But in all the time as chair of this war room and for 3 years beyond that, he never once visited Medupi. He said, "Let me give you assurance that yes, as much as we're going through load shedding, that is going to be a problem that stays with us for the next year, 18 months to 2 years. Beyond that, South Africa will have sufficient energy," close quote. His predictions were as reliable as Eskom. 2 years later, South Africa was plunged into unprecedented level 6 load shedding. So dire is the situation that last week, Wednesday, only one of Eskom's 17 power stations were operating at full capacity. Not Medupi, not Kusile, but Komati, a geriatric 60-year-old station producing just 1% of demand. It's no wonder the ANC keeps talking about a new dawn. It's because that's all we can rely on, natural light. In an appalling track record, Brian Molefe was appointed as Eskom CEO, who shortly thereafter became a disgraced Gupta pawn. Meanwhile, the ANC's investment arm, Chancellor House, received 25% of the local arm of Hitachi in 2007, which conveniently won the contracts to build boilers for power stations and reportedly paid Chancellor House $1 million in success fees. Medupi's final completion date was extended to 2015, then to 2020, and it's still not done. Medupi is at least 2.5 times over budget and expected to cost 145 billion rand. This makes Medupi the most expensive coal-powered station in the world. And if it's ever fully completed, this one project, according to the Terra Firma Academy, will increase South Africa's emissions by 6%, roughly the same carbon emissions as 7 million cars in 1 year. In addition, the carbon tax introduced by the national government will mean that Medupi could be taxed approximately 1.6 billion rand for its first year of full operation. And those costs will almost certainly be borne by us, the consumers. What a disaster, brought to you by the ANC. The real tragedy is what this disaster means for people. Wits economics professor Yanni Rousseau estimates the country's economy could be 25% larger were it not for load shedding. This equates to a cost of 1.2 trillion rand in lost economic activity, growth and investment, and which contributes to crippling unemployment. And what about mothers that can't warm food for their children or prepare bottles for babies? What about small businesses that are losing what little they have with rotting food in their fridges? Or dialysis patients that can't use their machines to keep them alive? What about COVID-19 vaccines that need to be stored at minus 70 degrees Celsius? Load shedding affects lives and livelihoods, and it also opens up rife opportunity for crime. Last month here in the city, 3 people died during load shedding because their neighbors thought their screams were as a result of a burglary, which has become common during power outages, instead of their house being on fire. But Western Cape citizens and South Africans have become resilient despite government failures. Families across suburbs support each other to warm food. We've created apps to help us plan and continue life, where the ANC government has failed us. An example of Western Cape innovation in this area is the Plentify Hotbot, which works with the City of Cape Town as a partner in government. The device learns the behavior of our households and adjusts power usage to lower strain on the grid during peak time. Energy alternatives have been made possible through other governments, such as this provincial government and municipalities here, which together have lobbied national and supported one another in municipal energy resilience. Like South Africans, we have to work around Pretoria to get things done. And today's amended regulations are too little, too late. On electricity, the ANC has failed us. While the rest of the world is moving to a future free from fossil fuels, the ANC is still hoping that yesterday's fossil fuel projects will be realized. Maybe the only real fossil to be worried about is the ANC. And Honorable Kama, what a joke to exalt Johannesburg. Johannesburg City Power is the worst. Their load shedding lasts for 6 days at a time, while here in Cape Town, we're able to protect residents from one stage of load shedding at a time. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And now recognize Honourable Makamba Bochia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Load shedding continues to affect the lives of millions of South Africans in a negative way. And by look of things, this is something people will have to endure for a couple of years to come due to lack of proper leadership in the country. The people responsible for running the energy sector in this country together with Eskom have failed us as citizens and people living in this beautiful nation. Since 2008, the country has been bleeding billions of rands as a result of power outages associated with load shedding. Having said that, although bulk of the blame should be directed at national government for failing to steer the country out of darkness, the DA-led Western Cape provincial government have equally been nothing but spectators, as they have failed to mitigate by introducing other energy alternatives for the past 11 years. So they cannot come now and claim that they can all of a sudden lead from the front in restoring the lights, as they also remain part of the problem. Deputy Speaker, the power outages negatively affect industrial outputs, investor confidence, and lead to loss of jobs in the country. This is so because the majority of our industries in the country rely on the power generated by Eskom. So when this power is cut, the manufacturing process is disrupted, which consequently affect output. During this unfortunate process, labor and industrial equipment remain ineffective and unused for hours, and the economic burden then shifts to these industries to continue paying workers and also servicing equipment debt, notwithstanding the loss of hours. As time goes by, the cost of running these industries become unbearable due to labor remaining ineffective, and this results in retrenchment on the part of staff members. Furthermore, Deputy Speaker, this uncertainty in the energy sector also affects investors' confidence in the country, as investors require some form of assurance that the country has adequate energy to function and to allow business to operate. Moreover, issues of unemployment in this province are not only as a result of failure on the part of Eskom. DA government also has no strategy of creating meaningful jobs in the province. One cannot have a provincial government that prides itself of creating EPWP job opportunities, which pays people close to nothing as if they are slaves. The agricultural sector in the province continues to boom in millions, while farm workers continue to be remunerated using 5 liters of wine and few boxes of table of grapes. These are also humans who should be treated with dignity and remunerated well. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Heron. I trust you on the road to recovery.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, there's no need to debate whether Eskom is continuing to fail us, whether we have managed to put a lid on crime, or whether COVID has negatively impacted our lives and economy. The answers to these questions are obvious. The real questions we should be seized with is what we're contributing constructively to fixing the mess. After 13 years of power failures, besides criticizing national government and Eskom, which we all do, and claiming to have deeper insights and better solutions, what has the Western Cape actually done to prepare for an alternative energy economy? Are we ahead of other provinces in the installation of solar geysers, or do we have more independent power producers lined up than anyone else? Hundreds of thousands of law-abiding citizens of Cape Town have lived in the shadows of gangsterism and crime for decades, spatially, socially, economically, and psychologically detached from what we, the privileged among us, call the mother city. What has happened to the what has the Western Cape actually done to address this tear in our fabric? Where's the inclusionary housing and the integration? Or is the plan simply to continue to manage gang and poverty-ridden ghettos on the Cape Flats forever? And besides pointing out deficiencies in our response to COVID and making regular statements about how much better a DA-led government would have managed the crisis, what has this government actually done to demonstrate its self-proclaimed superiority? Did we do contact tracing better? Did we do lockdowns better? Are more of us wearing masks and demonstrating social responsibility? Are we managing the vaccine rollout better? If we answered on the basis of the scientific facts and numbers we've all seen, we'd have to say no, 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 and no. Creating occasions such as this to lambaste national government failures as a political strategy, instead of using our energy to tailor solutions to improve citizens' lives, doesn't really move us forward at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Now I recognise Honourable Bosman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the recent unemployment statistics present a dim outlook for the future of this country in the hands of the ANC. In particular, the high levels of youth unemployment, which stands at an expanded rate of 74.7%. It shows that the ANC and GOOD has no plan whatsoever to provide meaningful solutions for the future of our young people. The country now faces a new series of rolling blackouts, which puts further strain on not just the economy, but also our lives, and will very likely lead to more job losses. Those who stand to suffer the most are our young people, especially those from disadvantaged communities and those from vulnerable backgrounds. With the unemployment rate already reaching its highest level since 1999, we face an incredibly dire situation where national government is unable to sustain an environment for young people to join the workforce. We see the growth in the criminal opportunism and the lure of gangsterism because our young people are desperate and criminals exploit this desperation. Despite this concerning fact, there's still no real answer from the ANC in Pretoria. As we know, the ANC in the Western Cape is devoid of any clear plan to address youth unemployment or to address anything for that matter. They cannot even pay their professional staff their salaries. Instead, the ANC has cancelled the 350 rands social relief of distress grant with no other plan in place, despite its own admission that without this grant, those living below the food poverty line would have doubled. Worse still, whilst the grant was being administered, the ANC Minister of Social Development marketed this grant as some sort of economic opportunity for entrepreneurship. This is an insult to the vulnerable people trying to make a living, and it's a pitiful exercise of an incapable state unwilling to provide the most basic of safety nets to our people. In the Western Cape government, Deputy Speaker, despite the harsh economic conditions placed onto us by our national government, this government in the Western Cape has sought to mitigate some of the most harshest effects by leading by being an effective government, in contrast to the incompetence displayed by the African National Congress. Even though the stringent COVID-19 regulations have forced many businesses to close, our government has paid out 38 million in relief funds to 249 small businesses. We've saved 2,000 jobs, and we provided new business initiative through the COVID-19 Content Center, the Go Digital Western Cape, as well as the jobs created through our red tape reduction units. It is a support structure that contributes not just to job creation, but also contributes to the Western Cape having the lowest expanded unemployment rate, showing that in this difficult time, people can still get opportunities in the Western Cape. And we see people coming to the Western Cape every day looking for jobs and looking for opportunities. In addition, when it comes to young people, the province has several projects in place to help them integrate into the economy. Some of these include the Year Beyond program, which empowers young people with skills to enter the world of work. Our Youth Safety Ambassador program is an example of how to keep young people off the street and to make sure that 18 and 35-year-olds get work opportunities across the province. Our Cape Access Centres provide an enabling environment for young people to look for work, upskill themselves, and use the resources available free of charge. Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, I want to say that in order to enable us to fight unemployment in this country, and specifically youth unemployment, we will need to ensure that all spheres of government work together towards realizing this. Even though the Western Cape has done well in offering the necessary resources and structures to create an enabling environment, a large portion of what is hampering us is our national government's inability to come to the table. What we need is a long-lasting solution that will mitigate the effects of the lockdown and ensure that the key state-owned enterprises like Eskom have mechanisms in place to keep the lights on so that we don't put any further strain on the economy. I want to encourage Honourable Khama to write to the President again and ask him to take young people seriously, and ask him to take the economy seriously, and ask him to really get the ANC to either work or allow themselves to be voted out like they were voted out in this province. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, children born in 2007 will this year celebrate their 14th birthday. This is the period of shame and hardship that South Africa has experienced because of load shedding. These students will have grown up with load shedding and seen the inefficiency of the ANC government to keep the lights on, to keep us safe, and to provide a vibrant economy. Leaders and decision makers in Eskom and government predicted in the late 90s that Eskom would run out of power reserves by 2007 unless preventative measures were taken. Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, which measures were taken? Which measures were taken? With load shedding, the most vulnerable people suffers. They suffer the most, and the ANC government has failed to expand the country's energy production capacity before 2007. This failure has seen the country subjected to 5 periods of load shedding that has its core and sum total of a complete lack of planning for the future. The economy is a skeleton of its vitality before load shedding. The economy has lost its vibrancy. Our economy is in ruins. The economy under the ANC government through load shedding has failed the people of South Africa. The economy has been weakened by the ANC's government's inefficiency. Big companies and small ones has been hit hard, rising the unemployment rate to staggering numbers. We are presenting this to the people of the Western Cape to say there's local government elections. Choose right. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians, for being exactly on time. I now recognise Honourable Minister Mayor.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, this debate takes place against the background of massive load shedding, stage 4, and despite the promises by the President, things are getting worse by the day in South Africa. The city of Johannesburg, South Africa's business and economic hub, is collapsing right in front of our eyes.
Honourable Minister, put your microphone on, please. Your microphone.
Will I start over?
Yes, please, for the record. My apologies, we only realised that now.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, this debate takes place against the background of massive load shedding, stage 4 now in South Africa, and despite the promises by the President, things are getting worse by the day in South Africa. The city of Johannesburg, South Africa's business and economic hub, is collapsing right in front of our eyes. A once prosperous creator of wealth in South Africa is now beyond fixing under the present government in South Africa. Johannesburg is responsible for 14% of South Africa's economic activities, and the electricity problems in Johannesburg put South Africa in an economic crisis. It is not only businesses that suffer, as Honourable Member Christian just mentioned now. Ordinary people cannot live a dignified life without electricity. People in townships suffer the most. South Africa has an ANC government that simply does not care. A government that is not accountable to people anymore. A government that has no integrity at all. A government that does not know how to use innovation to solve the complex problems of the energy crisis. They appoint cadres and incompetent managers. They do not have a responsive governance approach. Honourable Deputy Speaker, contrasting this to the Western Cape government, under the leadership of Premier Alan Winde, the Western Cape is the best run government in South Africa. The Western Cape has completed lifestyle audits of members of his cabinet. President Ramaphosa has made similar promises, but realized he would have to fire half of his cabinet if he were to conduct a lifestyle audit on his cabinet ministers. The Western Cape will create 1,000 green jobs by rehabilitating 15,000 hectares of agricultural land by clearing alien vegetation. The Western Cape government is responsive. Every week, Premier Alan Winde and Dr. Klute host a digicon to brief our province citizens about our COVID-19 response plan. The Western Cape government recently launched the vaccine registration dashboard, showing in real time the uptake of the vaccine and the registration campaign per geographical area in the Western Cape. Innovation in action in the Western Cape. The Western Cape government is a government led by data and evidence. We are making decisions based on research, data, and evidence. During the State of the Province address, Premier Windy called on the citizens of this province to stand together to beat COVID-19, to create jobs, to build safer communities, and to ensure dignity. While the ANC switches off the lights in South Africa, the DA is switching on the lights to create jobs, make the Western Cape safer, and create well-being and dignity. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I now want to turn to two pieces of legislation before Parliament that does not have the interest of the public at heart. These two bills are the expropriation of property, generally known as the Expropriation Bill, and the draconian Firearms Bill, also known as the Firearms Control Amendment Bill. The Expropriation Bill wants to put all property and all land under the custodianship of government, effectively the nationalization of property. Private property is the cornerstone of any democracy, and we know that the ANC is hell-bent on destroying the constitutional democracy in South Africa. Banks in South Africa are exposed to 1.6 trillion rand in mortgages and expropriation without compensation, Madam Deputy Speaker, will effectively collapse the entire banking system, the entire financial institutions. Members of this legislature must know it will cause the Speaker of this House to pay your salaries each month in cash. I would hate to see Honorable Lekker putting her cash, her salary, under her mattress, because that will be the only banking system left if expropriation continues.
Cash is king.
Putting money under her mattress 50 years ago, and I would not like to see South Africans going back to 50 years ago. Let us put people 50 years ahead, give them access to successful title deeds, private property rights, mentorship, government support, and authentic empowerment. The Western Cape has a proven track record of successful land reform because it shows that it is possible and it is working in the Western Cape. But it can only work because people have a capable state in the Western Cape. It only works because our beneficiaries are getting the support of the government and proper mentorship. We must stand united in the Western Cape against the expropriation bill. Let us be bold and brave. Let us tear this bill into pieces. Let us send a signal to the ANC government. Your bill will not be implemented in the Western Cape. Tough luck. Meneer die president, dit is nou tyd om ernstig te wees met die boodskap en 'n boodskap vir die ANC regering te stuur. Die regering by monde van die nasionale minister van polisie het misluk om Suid-Afrikaners se veiligheid te verseker. Nou wil die regering deur middel van 'n wetsontwerp mense se vuurwapens onneem wat hulle moet gebruik vir hulle selfverdediging. Meneer die minister, die DA en die inwoners van die Wes-Kaap spreek u nou mooi aan. Stop waarmee u besig is. U krap nou daar waar dit nie juk nie. Wapeneienaars en wetsgehoorsame burgers het die reg om hulle te beskerm, want u regering het alle Suid-Afrikaners gefaal, daarom moet hulle self beskerm. Die wapenwetsontwerp van die regering is irrasioneel en ons gaan dit verwerp. Landbouers gaan dit verwerp. Boere, hulle gesinne, agriwerkers word wreedaardig en brutaal op plase vermoor en nou wil die regering hulle wapens wat hulle moet gebruik om hulle te beskerm wegneem. Nee, meneer Bekkie, hier het jy nou te ver gegaan. Jou twak is nat. Ons Suid-Afrikaners gaan dit nie duld nie. Die Weskaap gaan dit nie duld nie. Ons boere gaan dit nie duld nie. Ons werkers gaan dit nie duld nie. Let us vote out this criminal syndicate in South Africa. Vote for the Democratic Alliance and stop the madness. Vote DA and experience the difference. Use your vote on the 27th of October to bring real change in South Africa, in every town, in every street across South Africa. Madam Deputy Speaker, when a bill appears before Parliament that contradicts the spirit of a constitutional democracy, there's only one choice left, and that's the choice we, the people of the Western Cape, exercise today in this House. And so, this bill, expropriation, contradicts the spirit of the Constitution. It should be in the dustbin. The firearms bill takes away the right of people for self-defense. It contradicts the bill. It should be in the dustbin. This is the message from the Western Cape to the National Minister, to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Enough is enough.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, and congratulations to your appointment as Leader of Government Business. I now recognise Honourable Brinkcase. Is he able to hear us? I know he's travelling.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much. I am quoting the Al-Jamaa President and Member of Parliament, Honourable Hanif Hendricks, who recently said to the National Assembly, it is the most unpatriotic thing of the DA to say that South Africa is a failed state. Firstly, we must acknowledge and recognize the state of bankruptcy South Africa was in when it was handed over to a democratically elected government in 1994. Let's not forget, when this government took over, the country was in a dire fiscal state and still managed to pay off a huge apartheid debt. During apartheid, the distribution of electricity by Eskom only served part of the population of the country. In post-apartheid, Eskom had to deliver to more people, including the former Bantustans. The Western Cape Provincial government is responsible for ensuring that its energy strategy complements that of the national government. The question is, does this provincial government meet its mandate? It has set a target of 25% energy from renewables by 2020. Did it meet this target? If Eskom is failing to meet its duties under the license, the mandate of the province is to complement. So compensate for the
people wanted the case of the Kuya thing. And
Order. 1 minute, please. Can we just have muting of microphones before Honourable Brinkcase continues?
Someone spoke about gays.
Is Christian, member Christian.
Honourable Christian, please mute your microphone.
Gays.
Can you please mute Honourable Christian's microphone? Noted, muted. Thank you very much. Honourable Brinkcase, you may continue. Honourable Brinkcase, are you there? Just check that you're not muted. We might have muted you too.
Yes, the Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm here.
You
Can
may
I continue?
Yes, you may proceed. Apologies for the disruption.
Thank you very much. What is the province doing to give homeowners and companies' tax deductions to promote small embedded energy generation options such as solar panels and wind. Whilst it is correct to blame the national government and ESCOM for unreliable and insecure energy supply, the political responsibility has to be assumed by the Western Cape administration for its statutory duty to complement ESCOM at local level. This province must question its own performance. Every home and commercial building should be now have its own solar panels and its own solar water heaters. On safety.
Thank you, Honourable Brinkhouse. Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you
I
very
now
much.
recognize Honourable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I think, Deputy Speaker, we have to counsel Honourable Member Mayor to understand whether he can speak as loud as he can. The honeymoon is over, as indicated by the aggregate performance of the DA in the by-elections in this current administration. So he must wake up from dreamland. The ANC in this provincial parliament welcomes this debate and has come to accept politics of deception, politics of privilege, and that have come to characterize the dealings with this House under the leadership of the Blue Detachment, the DA. The politics of optics where public perception is diverted to the form of things than their substance. Allow us then to accept our role of this as the South African state in its transformation from an apartheid inheritance to a democratic foundation towards a united, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous society for all as the only preoccupation of the ANC. It is that conviction that brings us here in this House and led to the seats we occupy in this House to continue the fight of a better society. It is no discovery, but a fact of history that the Western Cape has been ahead of the pack owing to the endowments of colonial conquest, something the former DA leader Helen Zille arrogantly boasted about in her colonial tweets. As a former Cape colony under British and later a union with Dutch rule to force the natives to the sidelines and hinterland, it's no discovery that the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and Limpopo, products of Bantustan's fortunes, were socially engineered by the policies of these colonial protagonists to the kind of poverty and underdevelopment experienced 27 years later. Cecil John Rhodes, in outlining the colonial agenda, clarified the vision of the time that we must find new lands from which we can easily obtain raw materials and at the same time exploit the cheap slave labor that is available from the natives of the colonies. As Dr. Chilite Rachitanga points this situation out in his book, New Cities, New Economies, that apartheid was highly geographical and the colonial settlement maps depicts how the two settler groups dissected the country for their benefit. So this province, Western Cape, as a former Cape colony, Gauteng as the former Transvaal, Natal Free State as former Orange Free State, are no accidents of history of the kind of uneven development we see and experience in our daily lives. The benevolence of the colonial endowments must never lead to undue self-importance by geography without recognizing the structural advantage a province like a Western Cape stand on. Deputy Speaker, as the ANC, we are not afraid to engage on what the impact of ESCOM has had on the Western Cape. In particular here in the province, since 1994, ESCOM has seen to the strengthening of the connection to the Western Cape with a third 260 kilometers, 400 kilovolts line, a new supply line to the Saldanha Steel Smelter Phase 1 of the project, requiring 210 megawatts of power by August 1997. These two projects are specifically mentioned in light of the growth of this province's economy since 1994 and the growth of our national economy. Since 1994, the majority of people of the Western Cape have had access to electricity thanks to the ANC-led government and its electrification program. Listening to ESCOM CEO on ENCA Judge for Yourself talk show yesterday, he acknowledged the coming to an end of our coal-fired power stations with excess of 40 years that have been a main source of our electricity generation needs. Those power stations have run their course and can no longer carry the country's increased needs for both households and industry. New power stations were brought into stream like Medupi, Kusile, once the period of renewables met South African near energy realities at a strategic time in global policy development, which were brought by effects of climate change. There lies the grand opportunity to part ways with the old, to usher an era of energy mix through renewables, modeled along transformative and inclusive approaches. We sit in a precarious period of managing a just energy transition while improving our energy availability factor. The efforts are underway in Eskom and DMRE to expand energy generation capacity, whilst government consider opportunities of blended financing from opportunities brought by green financing from the likes of World Bank and other FDIs to mitigate carbon emissions. We welcome the leadership of President Ramaphosa this morning to ease regulation and exempt generation projects of up to 100 megawatts in size from NERSA licensing requirements. This is what the Eskom CEO with Judge Dennis in the talk show raised as an immediate solution, that by allowing self-embedded generation up to 50 megawatt, such can realize up to 5,000 megawatts in the shortest period and relieves the pressure resulted in load shedding by Eskom. Such will buy the time required to shut down the old power stations and provide the bridging period needed to enable renewables in the grid. We must applaud the president's leadership to keep lights on. In this house, under a DA rule, we are subjected to a narcissistic deflection government who operate with an alternative reality, causing them to interpret events in whatever way that suits their blue lies narrative, leaving behind a shield of protection they learned ago that they have to be the one who decide what truth is. Deception of a well-run government and municipalities speak of politics of optics and grandeur that is biased to a certain class of citizens. Here is the other truth lived by citizens of this province. The blue troops are oblivious to. Where is the 70 million toward the municipal energy resilience project? What progress have been made? How many megawatts have been secured and by when? We await a DA government promise to keep lights on in this province. In an article by Oliver Wainwright titled Apartheid Ended 20 Years Ago, so why is Cape Town still a paradise for the few? This reality and sense of apartheid remains stronger even today, as this government had to be forced by courts to avert a 135 million rand sale of Sea Point property, and both the city and provincial government ordered to create an inclusionary housing plan. We thank our judiciary, our national government, and the citizens who stood firm and exposed the DA government failure to keep its citizens safe. In a presentation by DDET only yesterday to the Standing Committee, it was reported that Western Cape's labor force is above 3 million. Provincial unemployed is sitting at 680,000 individuals, but those that are not in education, nor in employment or training are 1,748,000. 58% of the provincial workforce are not economically active. 43% of youth of up to age of 24 is unemployed, nearly double the provincial unemployment rate. 53% of the provincial population of over 20 years of age does not have a matric. So this is the impact of DA government failure to keep citizens in jobs in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And now recognize Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, yesterday, Honourable Brad Herron tweeted, and I quote, "COVID-19 has been hectic since symptoms started on Sunday, but thanks to the Western Cape Government's Healthcare Centre, I received a call to confirm my positivity test, check that I was isolating, check I'd notified all possible contacts, and offered accommodation and support," close quote. So to answer Honourable Brad Herron's question, the answer to your questions, Honourable Brad Herron, based on your own quote, is yes, yes, and yes. The Western Cape Government indeed does better based on your own tweet from yesterday. And I certainly hope that you do get well, Honourable Member. To Honourable Nkondlo, thank you for that input. Honourable Nkondlo talks about the alternative reality. And she mentions Medupi and Kusile. In which, Deputy Speaker, via you, which universe that Honourable Nkondlo live in? Honourable Medupi and Kusile is not coming online soon. We had stage 4 load shedding yesterday. We have stage 3 load shedding today. So there's nothing to thank the president for. The reason we are here today, it's because of the ANC-led government. The reason National Parliament had to back Eskom to temporarily suspend load shedding for the rest of the country, so 400 members could pass the budget, was because of the ANC. Despite decades later, Medupi and Kusile is not coming online, Deputy Speaker. Tens of billion rand overspent, simply being looted. So I don't know, based on her speech, Honorable Deputy Speaker, which universe does Honorable Kondlo live in when she talks about Kusile and Medupi? It's just unbelievable. It's actually quite bizarre that she could say something like that. Honorable Kama quote via you, Deputy Speaker, and I quote him, he says, only the hypocrite is rotten to the core. The Honorable Kama obviously speaks about the ANC. He's not speaking about us, because the Honorable Kama would have noticed just a few minutes ago, and I would like him to pick up his phone by you, Deputy Speaker, and go to the City of Joburg's Twitter account. And I'm going to quote some tweets for you, Honorable Kama, by the Deputy Speaker, from the City of Johannesburg's Twitter account. Outage at Houtkoppen, outage at Boot Hill, outage at Sepuseng, outage at Eskom Marlborough. This is the City of Joburg the Honorable Kama want to put up here as the city who's going to invest in renewables. What kind of a city that cannot keep its lights on has an intention of spending money on a renewable city? Yet yesterday, while the rest of the country was on stage level 4, City of Cape Town, under the DA-led government, was on stage level 3. We could have done better, obviously, was it not for the ANC-led government. The Honorable Kama went further. He talked about safety and security. But Honorable Kama, via you, Deputy Speaker, the only reason we have the safety plan is because the ANC-led government failed to keep this country safe. That's why we have this debate. Otherwise, I would not have brought this debate to the House. So, Honorable Kama, to quote you, only the hypocrite is rotten to the core, and the hypocrite is the ANC. Honorable Kama, just another quote that comes to mind from the City of Joburg's Twitter account. We are aware of block level 1 that were not restored after load shedding. I repeat, Deputy Speaker, we are aware of block level that were not restored after load shedding. Honorable Kama, I suggest you visit City of Joburg, where you'll be in the dark the whole day. Only the hypocrite is rotten to the core. That is the ANC, honorable members of this House. Honorable members, Honorable Dr. Ivan Meyer talks about the gun bill. And what is quite sad by you, Deputy Speaker, not one member of the ANC has said anything about this draconian bill that want to disarm all of us, the last line of defense. Yet we saw the last few days, ANC members wax lyrical about Jeremy Vieri, even a YouTube clip from a national member of parliament, ANC Faiz Jacobs, about Jeremy Vieri. Yet the citizens of this province, 6 million people, are being disarmed by the ANC members of parliament, and not one of them have the decency to say, don't disarm our citizens, don't let our citizens become victims of crimes. That is the hypocrites, is rotten to the core. Honorable Kama, via you, Deputy Speaker, that is your ANC. The hypocritic ANC, Honorable Deputy Speaker, via you, as we sit here just outside Lutuli House, the bastion of corruption, staff members of the ANC marching to their own head office. The hypocrite is rotten to the core. Honorable members, that's the ANC. They didn't say one word. The party they're supposed to fight for the poor from the Western Cape, where their own staff members had a bleak Christmas because they failed to deal with them properly. Now their staff members at the head office don't have money to pay their bonds, Honorable. Same like Danell. Who's governed? Governed by the ANC. Only the hypocrite is rotten to the core. That core is the core of what's rotten in this country, and that is the ANC government. And for South Africa to succeed, the ANC must step aside, and the ANC must die, honorable members. The hypocritic is rotten to the core. The ANC is that hypocrite, honorable members. And honorable members, Member Heron also, based on the 3 questions that he asked, and I can give him the facts. As a member of the ad hoc committee, he should be aware of it. Just last week, 15% of all active vaccination sites in South Africa were in the city of Cape Town. Just 40% of the sites in the 6 big cities in the Northern Cape, the Free State, and the Northwest still have 20 sites and fewer. The Western Cape and KZN are the only provinces exceeding the national average. So on your questions, Member Heron, yes, yes, and yes, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Based on what Member Kama's other input he gave earlier about the DA policies ensure women and children gets raped. That is ludicrous, Honorable Deputy Speaker, absolute ludicrous to even make such a statement that he made earlier on, because the policies that the DA government is implementing is to stop what the ANC government has done. They've destroyed the gang unit. If it wasn't for us to beg for the reinstatement of the gang unit, on the oversight visit, by the way, which the ANC members didn't bother to come to the National Laboratory, 100,000 lab DNA samples backlog. That is a disgrace and the ultimate spit in the face of victims of gender-based violence, victims of rape, victims of murder, because the DNA samples that's supposed to get the criminals in jail is sitting in a lab in Plattekloof, and now that is hypocritic to the core, which is the ANC government. They destroyed the police in the Western Cape. They destroyed our electricity generation capacity with Eskom, and they destroyed our opportunity to fight crime by reducing the police by nearly 4,000 members in the Western Cape. So hypocritic to the core. That is the ANC, Deputy Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That brings us to the end of our list of speakers, and that concludes the debate on this subject. I now recognise the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With the concurrence of the members posing oral questions, I would like to ask that oral question 3 and 4 stand over, please.
Thank you very much to the Chief Whip. We will now deal with these questions as printed on the question paper.
Point of order.
1 minute. Honourable Dugmore, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I would just like to raise a point of order in regard to the information provided by the Chief Whip. I'm very concerned of a consistent tendency now where MECs either do not arrive or are not available for interpellations, or they are not in the House when questions are asked. I think this is simply unacceptable. Everyone knows that they have a responsibility to account to this House on a Thursday, and I want to ask you to please, Deputy Speaker, investigate this matter, establish what exactly were the reasons provided, and that this House discusses and we have your view in regard to this tendency on behalf of the MECs of this province. Thank you.
Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Dugmore has been a member longer than I have, so he'll know what the process is for oral questions. The members that posed the questions have agreed or asked that the questions stand over, and it is their prerogative to ask that those questions stand over, which is what they have done. If it were his question and he did not agree for that question to stand over, that would be a different matter. Thank you.
That's quite correct. Thank you very much. We will now move over to questions. Please may I advise and remind our members that there are 4 opportunities for follow-up questions, and the honourable member who posed the question has the first opportunity for a follow-up. So we will only deal with question 1, question 2, and question 5. I now recognise I will now recognise Honourable Minister Mayor.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The following Western Cape agricultural products currently shows the biggest potential for export growth into member countries of the Africa Free Trade Area. Oranges, both fresh and dried. Clementines, both fresh and dried. Lemons and lime, both fresh and dried. Grapefruit, fresh and dried. Grapes, fresh and dried. Fresh apples, fresh pears, unfermented apple juice, wine in bottle or in bulk, ciders, perry and meat, jams, jellies, marmalades, purees or paste of fruit, flour, meats, and pellets of fish. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Department has recently completed a diagnostic and design evaluation of the post-COVID-19 future of the Western Cape agriculture and agri-processing. One of the 5 improvement objectives flowing from the recommendations of this report is to develop and implement a strategy focused on the rising middle class on the African continent as a market for Western Cape products. To this end, the department has included the following outputs in its subsequent implementation plan: complete a strategic Africa report in 2022, prepare an annual Africa Rising periodical publication, support market development in selected countries on the African continent, and support trade facilitation. Also establish strategic partnerships and exchange with specific areas on the African continent, and support the mechanisms to address soft and hard blockages in terms of our trade. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I recognise Honourable van der Westhuizen, and then I recognise Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you, Speaker. Through you to the Minister. Minister, thank you for the information, and it's heartwarming to learn that your department is poised to support those farmers and agri-processors that would like to focus on what you call the rising middle class north of our borders. My question is, what do you believe are impeding or holding back further growth in our exports to other African countries? And do you believe that the complaints from exporters about delays experienced at Cape Town Harbour affecting fruit exports is founded? I thank you.
Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, as members should know that the Western Cape represents 50% of all of South Africa's agricultural exports. And we currently see that there are some challenges at the Cape Town Harbour. My colleague, the Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities, had numerous engagements with the Ports Authority, the Cape Town Harbour, and I'm deeply concerned about the inefficiencies happening at the Cape Town Harbour. We have to get this right, because if we want to grow our export capability, particularly not only on the African continent, but also in the rest of the world, we need to fix the situation at the ports. And I'm thankful that the chairperson of the Standing Committee of Economic Development has agreed to also host a discussion on this matter, also to host this discussion together with the Standing Committee Chair and the Committee on Agriculture and the Environment, but also pay a personal visit to the harbour in that particular authority. It is of critical importance that we improve the efficiency and the industry. I had some discussions with the citrus fruit growers, and they are willing to assist to create greater efficiency at the harbour, and we certainly are busy with some further discussion. But I have to stress, given where we are in South Africa, given the current challenges at the harbour, we must support all programs that can kickstart the economy and lead the economic recovery in South Africa. We know from the figures that we've seen last year in 2020, all the sectors of the economy had negative economic growth in 2020, and it was only the agricultural sector that had positive economic growth. And so we need to continue the export, particularly from the harbour, because I don't think it is fair to ask our citrus producers to export some of their products via the harbour in Port Elizabeth or the harbour in Durban, because that put another layer of additional cost on their export and the profit margins. So I'm concerned, Honourable Member of the Standing Committee, the Chair, Andrikus van der Westhuizen, but we will continue in the spirit of resilience, engage with the national authorities and make a breakthrough in this regard.
Thank you, Honourable Dugmore, and then Honourable Moran.
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I would just like to ask the MEC as a follow-up question that no doubt he is aware of the support which has been expressed by agricultural organizations and the business sector for the work which the ANC national government has done in terms of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and other agreements, which in fact are assisting both farmers and farm workers in our province and nationally, given the work that our national government has done. Would you agree with those organizations representing organized agriculture that the national government is indeed doing a huge amount to assist our farmers in the country and the province? Thank you.
Over to you, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Constitution of South Africa is quite clear. The issue of agriculture is a concurrent responsibility, and hence my department worked with the various institutions responsible for stimulating the economic growth. One of the things that we are committed is to grow the economy within the framework of the intergovernmental framework, intergovernmental cooperation, and when necessary, I think this shows that it is possible beyond the boundaries of politics to make a difference. We need less politics and more economic growth in this particular space, and therefore I support the citrus growers here in the Western Cape. I support the Western Cape Economic Forums. I support AFASA. I support the Agri-Western Cape. I support Hot Grow. I support all the institutions and national bodies and provincial bodies and my colleague, the Minister of Finance and Economic Development and West Grow, because this shows that we can indeed, despite our political boundaries, make a breakthrough in terms of exporting agricultural products, because from the Western Cape, Honourable Deputy Speaker, as you know, 14% of all the fruit not from the Western Cape, from South Africa, 14% of the fruit goes to the United Kingdom. 44% of all the fruit that are exported from South Africa goes to the European Union. And to get into that market requires intergovernmental cooperation. And I'm thankful for my predecessors, the current Premier, Alan Winde, campaigning for more export, the current Deputy Speaker, Beverly Safer, during her term of office, she fought hard to grow our exports, working together with the MINMEX in the National Department. And I'm very happy that those things are now coming to fruition. So yes, this is a collective effort of everybody involved. And I'm particularly happy that workers can now benefit from these trade relations on the African continent. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Minister, Honourable Moran.
Speaker, thank you very much and good afternoon to everyone present. Speaker, I just wanted to check with the MEC. Although there was a delay with the kickstart of the trade agreement from July last year up to January this year, whether the items listed by the MEC himself, whether there was any exports through the African countries from January this year up till now, and if, what are those items that's been exported? Thanks.
Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Member Pat Moran asked me specifically which products from the Western Cape were exported from January up to now in terms of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I would be very happy to come back to the House to give you the specific details in terms of the commodities, but also in terms of the timeframes when these things were exported on the African continent.
Thank you very much. Are there any further follow-up questions?
Speaker, yes.
Oh, is that over to you again, Honourable Moran?
Speaker, yeah, to the MEC again. MEC, do you foresee that there will be a decline of, you're saying that all exports of South Africa, the Cape Town Harbour is responsible for 50% of all exports. Do you see a decline in exports through the Cape Town Harbour because of the African trade agreement that's been signed by African countries?
Over to you, Minister.
Honourable Member Pat Moran, when I assumed this office, I set myself a goal to increase our market access and our export by 5% over the next 5 years. Our calculations indicates that that will translate into creating 19,000 new jobs. We have done a study in 2014 by the MERO, the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook, as well as the PERO, the Provincial Economic Review and Outlook. And during my previous term as the Minister of Finance, I have tabled in this House a report that indicated that since 2014, we are now from the Western Cape exporting more products from the Western Cape on the African continent. Now that was prior to the Africa Free Continental Agreement. I expect, based on the rationale, that we will export more on the African continent because there are also some greater benefits. These exports not only go via the harbor, these exports are also going through land, particularly in Namibia, biggest partners in terms of the trade between the Western Cape and Namibia, Botswana, as well as Zambia and other African countries. So I do not foresee a reduction in the export of the products through the harbor. In fact, I anticipate a greater export because we've seen that during COVID-19, there's a huge appetite for, in fact, we have seen permanent behavioral change in terms of people's preferences for their diets, for their food. I want to export more ostriches, healthy food to the rest of the world. We are now seeing great progress in terms of citrus. In fact, South Africa is the second biggest citrus exporter in the world and the 9th biggest citrus producer in the world. And Limpopo is South Africa's biggest producer of citrus. And I regularly engage with the Citrus Growers Association because we need to get foreign buitenlandse valuta, want Suid-Afrika het dit bitter nodig en daarom sien ons ook tendense van Suid-Afrika se landbou as geheel dat 50% van al Suid-Afrika se landbouuitvoerprodukte is ook geoormerk vir die Afrika kontinent. En ek voorsien Honorable Member Maran dat dit eerder gaan toeneem eerder as afneem. As ons in ag neem, Honorable Member Maran,
Please proceed.
Honorable Member Maran, you will appreciate that a country like Germany needs about 400,000 migrant workers to work in the agricultural sector in Germany. With COVID-19, the borders were closed, which means there's less workers, particularly from Eastern Europe, to work on the farms. Poland, for example, less of workers to work on the productive lands in Germany. I suspect that will lead to a greater demand. There will be a shortage of agricultural products in Germany, and I see that as a great opportunity for us in the Western Cape to export more of our agricultural products also into the European Union, particularly Germany and France.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That brings us to the end of question 1. We will now begin question 2. Back to you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, to Honourable Member, Chairperson of the Standing Committee, Mr. van der Westhuizen. Yes, rural safety as a priority of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture requires engagement of relevant stakeholders as well as farmers, producers to ensure a safe, protected and sustainable agricultural sector. Therefore, to address and find solutions to the issue of safe transportation of agri-workers, stakeholder engagement and collaboration with industry partners, organized agriculture producers and agri-workers are paramount. And I want to put it on record, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I am thankful for members of the Standing Committee, including Honourable Member Maran, for raising this issue beyond the party political boundaries because it is the safety of agri-workers. It's my concern, it's a concern of the committee, it's a concern of this Western Cape Parliament, it is the concern of everybody in this province. The Western Cape Department of Agriculture engaged with the Department of Transport and Public Works, the Road Safety Management Unit in that department, regarding the transportation of agri-workers, and will be collaborating on road safety interventions. These interventions will include joint road safety awareness campaigns on farms and integrated traffic operations on identified agricultural routes where agri-workers and agricultural produce are transported. In addition, engagement with organized agriculture, especially Agri-Western Cape, is currently underway to explore alternative, safe modes of transport for agri-workers. This is non-negotiable. I want to see the safety of agri-workers guaranteed in this transportation. One focus area will be on various vehicle designs and proposed loading capacities of these vehicle designs to enhance safety of agri-workers. Furthermore, the same matter was tabled at the Standing Committee for Agriculture and Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 18th of May 2020. The proposed amendment of Regulation 247 of the National Road Traffic Regulations, which legislate the circumstances under which persons may be carried or transported on goods, vehicles on public roads. It is a national mandate, and the MEC of Agriculture and the department will continue to engage the mandated departments, including the National Department of Transport through our Provincial Department of Transport, to find amicable solutions to the issue of safe transportation of agri-workers. The regulatory framework is a secondary piece of legislation, and the recommendations from the Standing Committee will be conveyed to the National Department, and I really appreciate that the Standing Committee has made this also a priority of this legislature.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable van der Westhuizen, do you want a follow-up question?
Yes, please, Speaker.
Over to
Deputy
you.
Speaker, through you to the Minister of Agriculture. Minister, since the Western Cape is not the only province in which employees are put at risk by being transported on goods vehicles, are you aware of initiatives in other provinces to also improve the safe transport of particularly seasonal workers? And if not, what do you believe is needed to secure the support of your colleagues in other provinces to push for amended traffic regulations?
Over to you, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm not personally aware, and I do not want to speculate about transportation of agri-workers in other provinces. But I think by implication in your question is a suggestion that it might be a good thing to also raise this matter at the National MINMEC, A, to determine whether this is a problem also in other provinces, and B, how can we collectively, as the MECs for Agriculture in the 9 provinces, together with the National Minister of Agriculture, also engage with the National Minister of Transport to effect regulatory change. This matter, we can have protocols in place, but I think there are protocols in place, but I think it is now time, because I have visited, like Honourable Member Maran, people who have died on the road as a result of being transported in open vehicles. And I think it is now the time to get greater regulatory enforcement, and therefore we need to persuade our colleagues in the MINMEC to do exactly this, and I will put this on the agenda of the next MINMEC, and I will report back to the Standing Committee in this regard.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Maran.
Speaker, thanks. Speaker, to the MEC. Besides Regulation 247, of the national transport regulations. We also got section sectoral determination 30, who also prescribe how workers should be transported in a safe manner. And I just wanted to check with the with the MEC, whether they've basically spoken to the new Minister of Public Works and Transport in the Western Cape regarding that specific issue, the safe transport of workers. Also, Deputy Speaker, I also want to check with the MEC, as I've said, besides 247, we also got the lockdown regulations, and there was basically a proposal by the Standing Committee that the National Minister of COGTA should be engaged to see whether some of those recommendations can be included in the lockdown regulations, specifically the 50-50 issue. The 50% of the mess allowed on those trucks, whether those particular issues were communicated with the minister, and if not, why not? Thanks.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member Maran, for the question. He asked whether I have consulted with the newly appointed Cabinet colleague, Mr. Dalen Mitchell. The answer is no. Will I do it? Absolutely. His hands is currently full with the taxi situation, and I undertake to take this matter up in this month, and I will report back to the Standing Committee in this regard. In terms of the lockdown regulations, yes, there is a 50-50 protocol. We have shared this information in terms of the transport protocols during the lockdown period. This has been widely shared with both the commercial agriculture and also the emerging farmers. This was widely communicated in numerous platforms. And the question is, did we communicate the recommendations of the Standing Committee to the National Minister of COGTA? Well, I have not seen the specific regulations, recommendations from the Standing Committee, and I would be very happy to receive that, Honourable Deputy Speaker. And once I receive it, I will certainly take this matter up with my colleague, the Minister of Local Government, Minister Anton Bredel, because he liaises on behalf of this government with the COGTA National Minister in terms of the disaster management regulation. So I will certainly take this up, both with the Minister of Transport and Public Works and the Minister of Local Government, and I will certainly report back to the Standing Committee.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Any further follow-up questions? No? Right, that brings us to the end of question 2. We move over to question 5. I recognise Honourable Minister Mbombo.
Thank you, Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you. The question from Member Makamba Bokya in reference to the EMS. The extortion syndicate matter has never been raised to us by EMS officials themselves, nor with the department, but we are currently investigating the claims as reported in the news media. The safety of our paramedics is high priority for us in the department. We continually explore new ways to ensure that our staff can return home safely every day. We do have an EMS staff safety plan that details our initiatives. This has not changed and the efforts are ongoing. The last time I even launched a Kusaleka campaign at the time that we had quite a huge number of the attacks on the EMS. Part of the plan is about to ensure that whenever paramedics enter a red zone area, or if they suspect that there is a danger that is looming, they are being escorted by the police. We ask members of the community to report incidences to the nearest police station without a delay. The EMS, as we know, that they perform an essential service. And as you know, that according to the South African Constitution, Section 27, it talks about no one should be denied medical care. That now the community themselves attack our staff. It means that that ordinary person will end up being denied the emergency medical services. And unlike with the other essential services across, whether it's from municipality or wherever, when there is a danger or there are unrest, where they could be told for them that the services will be withdrawn because of the unrest. But with the EMS, they are always there, no matter what. So in our safety plan, all our staff are offered counseling and treatment through the Employee Assistance Program. We make sure that part of the other interventions is about the dedicated safety desk with own channel to monitor crews operating red zones. Up to date, you must understand that intelligence regarding the red zones and the no-go zones areas, these are being declared by the police, not by us. Standard procedure to utilize law enforcement escorts in red zones is part of the intervention. And across, we've got community engagement groups so that they become informed in case where it becomes quite urgently that we have to withdraw our service in those particular areas. Regular engagement with the organized labor task team, collaborating on security and safety zones is part of all of those. We work very closely, Member Bodja, with the SAPs. We really appreciate, even last time when we ended up having to take these matters to court, they make sure that they provide us with the whole of the information that is required, so that it doesn't only become that it becomes a crime related to assault, but that it has impacted on the availability of the services that could or might have caused someone also to have severity of his or her illnesses because of the unavailability of the EMS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Makamba Botja, you want a follow-up question? No, I think Honourable Moran, that is your old hand, so I'm going to assume that Honourable Windvogel was next and then Honourable Philander. Over to you, Honourable Windvogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Deputy Speaker, to the MEC, given that the attacks on EMS personnel affects the waiting times tremendously, to what extent does social emphasis and personnel affects the EMS, and how is your government addressing that? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Minister?
As I indicated earlier, it has to be the whole of society approach, because with the EMS, we're talking about the human beings who also would be scared, understandable, if they have to go to an area where there are unrest. So that's why we rely on the locals, in addition to the escort by the police. And it's true, Member Windvogel, because now when we have to wait going via the police station in order to be escorted, it does have an impact on the waiting times. And in some cases, actually, we have seen where the community will even attack them together with the police, or they're attacking the police that is escorting even the healthcare workers themselves. That's why even when they have to come into those areas, they will have to make sure the EMS that they just load without even assessing the patient. They can assess the patient, the other one, while still driving. And unfortunately, we cannot militarize or securitize health services, because sometimes they will say that, why don't you have a security inside? You can't, because health is what is all about, the confidentiality and all of those. So that's why we appeal to everyone to be able to assist, because it does have an impact on the ordinary Auntie Sarah and the child who probably might be looking for this ambulance. In the metro, for example, together with the city of Cape Town, in their where they are, call it, I can't remember, but it's in Goodwood, where you'll find that it threw out using their cameras all over. And also in their own desk, we have got even the EMS and also plus the neighborhood watches and also some of the police there. It makes it easier, for example, when they get a call already, if there is some dangers around that area, the city is able to inform us immediately. Plus also because the city, they are in the same WhatsApp group with some of these neighborhood watches, If there is a likelihood that there might be dangers even before some of us might know or anyone might know immediately, because there are people who are residing in those areas, they do keep us informed. So yes, indeed, it does not only in the metro, because, for example, there was a time in Chicago, Pal East, where we had these issues. In Breda Valley, in Avian Park, where we had these issues. But how it helped, it was about when the communities themselves, which we've seen actually in Kailicha, where the Community Health Forum, Kailicha Development Health Forum, they even took it upon themselves to ensure that the EMSs are protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Honourable Philander.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you, Minister, thanks so much for you and your department for the Koseleka campaign initiative. And we also certainly welcome the employee wellness, which is standard procedure. Minister, with regards to the attacks on EMS staff, roughly this past few years, how many incidents were there? And were there perhaps any fatalities? And then Minister also made mention of the hotspot areas just now. Do the department or you, Minister, find that these recent incidents or rather take place outside of these hotspot areas? And how quick is the South African Police Service to respond on these cases? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as I indicated earlier, that these red zones are identified by the intelligence from the subs themselves, and then they communicate. So that's why they keep on changing, because there might be some time where you'll find that an area wasn't part of the red zone. I think there was a time, I think it's Matrosfontein, where it wasn't part of the red zone, but something happened, and then it has to be defined as such. For example, recently with the unrest that was protest that happened in Nyanga across that area, whilst other services, the bus and others had to be stopped, had to be withdrawn, but unfortunately you cannot withdraw the EMS. But you have to rely on them, because actually they do even have a right to say that I'm not going to go there. But that having such a dedicated staff who are able to soldier on, and noting that we have improved, even our vehicles have improved quite a lot in regard to have some of these required digitals and all of those, so that to avoid the situation, because in some instances you'll find that the attack, it will have been about maybe a scolly, a drug addict who just wants something that will be faster in order to be able to sell and also to get his or her own fix. And then in some instances, you'll find that even we've spoken to, to inform them that like even their telephones, mobiles, they shouldn't be exposing such publicly so that it attracts such scores. However, having said that, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be in a situation where the healthcare workers, specifically the emergency medical services, have to even to undergo that trauma of just even to think about their lives when they're going there to save their lives. In Africa, in countries with a civil war, always healthcare workers, always they've never been part of everyone, even when they're fighting the battle, you find that in the hospitals, they will never bomb the hospitals, they will never attack the EMS. But in South Africa, you get across, not only in the Western Cape, with the communities that need them mostly are the ones that actually attack them. That's the one part of it. And then secondly, the issue, you must understand that one ambulance, it takes about 11 staff per shift. I'm talking about the 24-hour shift. Meaning now, if now you ended up having 1 or 2 ambulances out of the system because the staff might be on sick leave, it does have a huge impact in terms of responding to these kind of situations. Therefore, we appeal to the people that it's not only about the people, but it's also about the breach of the Constitution, because it means that you end up not realizing the Section 27, that everyone has got to have an access to emergency medical service, because we are traumatizing our staff. And it's actually among our health professionals, EMS is the ones that have got a high level of stress and also absenteeism because of this issue. Because in most instances, actually, most of them, there are two, of course, and some of them, they are young, very young women, where they ended up not only being afraid of being attacked, but also potentially or possibility, probably they could be sexually assaulted. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, good afternoon. We are now moving to member statements. I now give the opportunity to the DA.
Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, failure to organize will put our teachers at risk. Whilst the Democratic Alliance welcomes the move for teachers to be vaccinated as a priority group, we need government to have the right measures in place to manage this process. Sadly, we don't have much confidence in national government when it comes to being organized. It is no secret that the central vaccination plan has been prolonged due to Pretoria's incompetence, ranging from procurement delays to an unstable national registration system. The time for so-called teething issues is long gone, and the system should have been piloted and ironed out almost a year ago. However, Speaker, the difference is in this province we have already supported the vaccination registration process in two ways. Firstly, by ensuring timely communication to qualified vaccine beneficiaries, and secondly, our Department of Education is laying the groundwork by already providing the necessary vaccine information to teachers and SGBs. We must ask, Mr. Speaker, what is missing, and the answer is obvious. The national government has not yet opened the EVDS system for the next set of vaccination beneficiaries, and this needs to happen some time ago to enable those people to register to receive their jabs on the system and to get ready to know where and when they should go for their vaccination. Nevertheless, we are confident in our provincial mechanisms which work efficiently in ironing out the issues that are created by the ANC central government. This is vital as we work toward achieving population immunity and a proper recovery of our economic and social lives. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Bosman. Honorable members, I now recognize the ANC. Is there a speaker for the ANC?
Load shedding. Oh no.
Thank you, Honorable
Thank
member.
you. Thank
I
you,
now
Nkosi Somlomo. The 1994 democratic breakthrough meant that a once a Yes, Speaker. Am I audible?
you may proceed. Okay, yes.
Can I?
Yes,
Okay.
Honorable Pastor.
Nkosi Somlomo, the 1994 democratic breakthrough meant that a once racially oppressive pariah state had successfully transformed into a republic based on freedom, the rule of law, and human rights. Before this, the country had gone through centuries long of racial rule, oppression, and land dispossession using repressive laws such as the 1913 Land Act and the Expropriation Act of 63 of 1975. As part of the social contract with the people, we have to repeal apartheid legislation, which resulted in disproportionate distribution of and inequitable access to land and property, replacing it with new progressive legislation driven by a democratic agenda. The Expropriation Bill 2020 is in line with this as it seeks to provide for a just and equitable process to restore the dignity of all citizens in addressing access to property and land. The ANC supports the passing of this bill as it clearly provides for equitable socio-economic transformation. The bill is as clear dealing and departure from the entrapment of the old order and clause of colonial and apartheid rule. The Western Cape still resembles the old apartheid rule as the DA remains steadfast in using land and property to further entrench the apartheid spatial legacy and racial segregation by pushing the black majority, including women and youth, to the outskirts of the city, far from the mainstream economic centers. The ANC calls on all the people of the province to attend the 4 public hearings on the expropriation bill in their numbers from today, 10th of June, in Cedarburg, till the last one, Sunday, 13th June, in Knysna, to provide National Parliament a resounding mandate to amend the bill. In the last hearing, the Western Cape people were unapologetic about their demand for land to be shared equally. We applaud the ANC and progressive forces that stood firm in driving this agenda against the apartheid apologists and agents of exclusions like the DA. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable members, I now recognize the EFF.
The EFF condemns in the strongest terms the selective and racist approach that continues to be taken by City of Cape Town every time when incidents of tree poisoning are reported. It has now come to the attention of the EFF in the Western Cape that in recent months, when incidents of fruit tree poisoning are reported which threaten the lives of innocent poor black children, then the city does not act in terms of conducting an investigation and making sure that the perpetrators of these crimes are brought to book. However, in cases where a poisoned tree bears no fruit and its existence is just for the pleasure of white people, then the city will leave no stone unturned in its quest to investigate and find the perpetrators of such an act. The case in point is the one of the Tupai resident by the name of Mr. Martha McKay, who reported that he invited children who happened to be the people of color, to come and pick up fruits in his garden. Apparently, his noble gesture from Arthur McKay did not sit well with some racist white people in the community who told him that his gesture is attracting the wrong kind of people into their lively upmarket suburb. When these white racists realized that Arthur was unmoved by their racist utterance, they then began vandalizing his yard and poisoning his fruit trees in order to spite him and those kids who feed them from these trees. This matter was reported to the City of Cape Town for investigation purposes, since these kids of color have been picking up and eating poisoned fruit while unaware. The city still did not act, nor were the person of police personnel act. The City of Cape Town will do anything to protect the racist white people of this province at the cost of lives of poor children of color. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Boche. Honorable members, I now recognize the DA.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I urge residents to make their voices heard at the public hearings scheduled in Langa, Beaufort West and Knysna over the next 3 days. These hearings are an opportunity to speak out against the dangers of the ANC's expropriation bill. This piece of draft legislation would put a massive roadblock in the way of home ownership, and by doing that, it can deny residents the right to receive their title deeds with actual ownership of the property they deserve to call home. The very meaning and value of a title deed would become null and void thanks to the rotten ANC. Secondly, the current bill effectively says that whether you own a piece of land, a car, or any other kind of asset, government can take it away from you. It also creates loopholes which could encourage further land invasions and harm our efforts to develop affordable housing. And finally, Speaker, we must also ask whether we can trust the ANC or any party in government with such legislation. This has the potential to bring back reminders of apartheid-style forced removals. Those are wounds that must never be reopened. Instead, what we need is effective implementation of land reform rather than dangerous legislation. That is why this Western Cape government has worked endlessly to give our residents security through owning their own homes. And for that reason, provincial government is using its own funding through the Asset Finance Reserve to transfer over 8,000 title deeds to qualifying beneficiaries this year. We ask all governments at every sphere to work with us to bring about meaningful transformation and justice through ownership. Ownership not for the state, but in the hands of the people. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, I now recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the ACDP in the Western Cape is concerned and appalled that there are calls to publicly apologize
by the learners of the DF Malan School because they objected to celebrate the Pride Month at their school. Why should learners now be subjected to educational seminars for learners and educators to promote inclusion? The ACTP wants to agree with the DF Malan School Governing Body Chairperson, Mr. Andre Roux, where the school rejected the request for the Pride celebration on the school premises on the basis that the belief that, according to Mr. Roux, that it could lead to tension and division within the school. As the ACDP, we do not condone any acts of intimidation or violence by the learners, but why should the Pride celebration be introduced at our schools? According to the word of God, God created male and female, and we as the ACDP will push a strong Christian agenda that offers a solution to this beautiful country. We are reminded by the word of God, and it's clear in 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. This country and province must say no to polygamy, must say no to polyandry, and no to same-sex toilets. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. It is for no little reason that the ANC throughout its history has always pursued a struggle for non-racial, non-sexist South Africa where everyone shares in the wealth of the country. We have always believed that the evil of racism, sexism, and classism are connected and that they continue to persist within our society. As a movement and as a government, the ANC sees its role to fight these scourges. It therefore comes as no surprise to us that our provinces began to be exposed to the numerous sexual harassment and sexual assault cases within our provincial administration and in our DA-run municipalities. When the DA perpetuates past privilege and when the DA denies race, it is only natural that sexism will also persist in the DA and where it governs. Sexual harassment and sexual assaults are only serious symptoms of a sexist institutional culture. We have seen the DA harbor and cover up racist leaders and members. We have seen the DA, through its policies, encourages and enhance the lives of the haves and the spending very little resources in comparison to the have-nots. And now we see the DA cover up and defend those men suspected of serious crimes and gender-based violence within the provincial administration and within DA-run municipalities. The people of the Western Cape and South Africa must realize that they are voting for when voting for the DA, a party which is committed to be denialist about race, class, and gender. I thank you, Speaker.
Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition, thank you very much. I now recognize the DA.
Speaker, only in South Africa can we find that a national minister for health is placed on special leave during a global health pandemic. And this is to focus on his alleged implication in corruption. Not only has Minister McKee's family members seemingly benefited from dodgy deals in a tender awarded to ANC-aligned Digital Vibes, the minister himself is reported to have signed off the irregular business. This flies in the face of his previous attempts to distance himself from the entire matter. The 150 million missing at this stage may be a drop in the ocean compared to what has already been lost due to corruption. It is nonetheless appalling to note. Speaker, it has now been 3 years since the start of the state capture inquiry. It has clearly demonstrated, my apologies, Speaker, I just had a difficulty. It has clearly demonstrated all that is wrong with South Africa, and the root of this is the failure of the national government to put a start to the end of corruption. I'm afraid this special leave will lead to nothing other than yet another public service excuse. And all this whilst billions are continuously pocketed from hard-working residents. Speaker, it is time that we debate the impact of corruption, the years of financial mismanagement of South Africa's public purse after 27 years, especially on our essential services. We have over 7 million unemployed people in this country. Delays in both the social grants and criminal justice system, whilst merely establishing talk shows on corruption. Enough is enough. Speaker, we must bring punishment at the polls. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable members, I now recognize the Freedom Front Plus, Honorable Murray.
We are taking votes in by-elections from the DA.
You're not Honorable Murray, Honorable Member. Honorable Murray is not in the House today. He informed the Speaker. My apologies. May I recognize Honorable Brenkes Al-Jamar?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the provincial government is failing the youth. The Western Cape provincial government is failing the youth by not having its hands all on decks to create employment. The Western Cape provincial government must ensure that its goods and services purchases are benefiting local communities. The apartheid era townships are where many of the unemployed people in this province live. Does the province do oversight at hospitals, universities, schools, and commercial businesses, whether they buy their goods and services from within the local communities in which they are located? One acknowledges that the Western Cape might not control the everyday administration of these institutions, but it allocates their budgets and does have a say on how where it is spent. The Western Cape is by far not doing enough to highlight the economic development and SME initiatives to the masses in Mitchell's Plain, Kailicha, etc. Instead, unlicensed informal traders in Gatesville and in Mitchell's Plain are being hounded like animals and have their goods destroyed or stolen during raids by law enforcement officials. If this province is serious about creating jobs and uplifting people, it should be assisting these traders and not impose unnecessary red tape on them. These traders have youths to support at school, university, and colleges. Is the city using its resources to enhance the economic potential of town centers such as Mitchell's Plain? Our youth must be uplifted with quality and sustainable jobs. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, over the past few weeks, opposition members have cast aspersions on the work of DA administrations. These allegations carry no weight. They demonstrate clearly that the ANC is out of touch with the reality, because reality is that the ANC sends one message: where they govern, they do not care. The ANC geen nie om nie. From national government, stage 4 load shedding is upon us. This severely impacts the lives of those struggling. In Johannesburg, the city had to return to Treasury a whopping 132 million rand meant for the upgrading of informal settlements and providing electricity. Add a scandal to this, the MMC for Social Development handed out food parcels during by-elections. Speaker, the city of Cape Town, as well as this province, tells a different story and picks up the slack of national government. Through the city's efforts, over 19 million rand goes to the social upliftment of vulnerable groups in Cape Town. Altogether, This money will be divided between 32 partner NGOs. The allocation will be spent on areas ranging from homelessness to youth development, substance abuse, and support to ECD centers. The city has also spent 39 million rand on its emergency food relief program. In total, 350 soup kitchens will be benefiting from this initiative. This means the city can offer over 200,000 residents with a warm meal every day. Speaker, through you and to the ANC members in the House, I ask that they urge their colleagues in national government to work with us, stop the looting, end the corruption, and for once show that they care about the plight of the vulnerable. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable America. Honorable members, that concludes member statements. In terms of Rule 145, subsection 6, I would like to request the honorable members in the executive, if they so wish, to utilize the 5 minutes allocated to them in terms of the standing rules. I recognize Honorable Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are very much audible, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to respond to the ACDP statement. I really find it extremely regrettable that the ACDP wants to deny people who are not the same as they are the right to feel included and able to express themselves. Inasmuch as I support the right of the ACDP to express its views, unless it amounts to hate speech, as defined in the Constitution, LGBTQIA+ people have the right to feel part of society, which includes our schools. If the allegations are true that have been reported, they are a disgrace, which is why we are investigating them fully. People should not have to feel that they cannot celebrate things that are important to them because others don't celebrate the same things. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I also have the hand of the Honorable Minister Prudel, the Minister of Local Government, Environmental Planning and Developmental Planning.
Thank you,
I now
Honourable.
recognize you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I disagree with the Honourable Botnia. I want to ask her that if there's anything that she's got evidence of, then she must go to the police and lay a charge. There's no protection for anybody from the DA side. So if she's got any proof of any poisoning of trees, etc., then she must go. It's her obligation to go to the police and lay a charge. So to our ANC Honourable Speaker, the ANC makes certain statements that the DA is covering up for the haves. The second statement they made is that we don't care about the sexual harassment cases, etc., etc. I want to state it that the Democratic Alliance is a party of rule of law. If there's evidence, if people be found guilty, then we will act as a party, and there's no protection for people like that. But on the haves, you know, it's so ironic, Honourable Speaker, because we, in every independent research, we the #1 province providing water to poor communities, the #1 province in providing sanitation to poor communities is the DA-run Western Cape. Electricity, sanitation, water provision, all of that, we #1. If you go to ANC-controlled provinces, you will find bucket toilets and all these kind of things playing down on people, and then they dare to stand up in this house and accuse the DA. Honourable Speaker, you know, it was the ANC who wanted to take us to court when we want during COVID, hard lockdown, when we want to institute, and we did institute a system through which we provide food to school children. It's the same ANC government that now all of a sudden care for people that cut the public protector's budget by 400 million. It's the same ANC government who cuts the SIU budget by 40 million rand. It's the same ANC government who provided R1 billion to the Zondo Commission to investigate ANC corruption, a commission who cannot put people in jail. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. This is the ANC who wants to grandstand in this house. To Al-Jamar, maybe they must look at their coalition partners, Honourable Chairperson, if they
can rather help us to fight for the rightful budget, then we will be able to build the necessary schools, health systems that will serve our people. On the traders, the informal traders, obviously we must take hands but we cannot do it without rules. There must be rules, because tomorrow there's an outbreak or illness, then they also want to blame this government. We're a government of rule of law. We will stay that kind of government. Doesn't matter what the ANC and Al-Jamaa is thinking. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
The ANC the Western Cape was even #1 in 2000 when the ANC was in control. So it's nothing new.
Order, Honorable Maran.
Exactly. The ANC is useless, man.
Order.
The DA is also useless.
Okay, you can all speak. Who wants to speak? What we're not gonna do here is to have a house that descends into chaos because we don't want to observe the rules. So I'm requesting the honorable members to help me manage the house with you. So this is our house, it's not my house. I'm requesting that, please, so kindly to assist me as the speaker in this regard. Honorable members, that concludes member statements, and we now move to notices of motion, which in terms of Rule 151, all the notices of motion by the honorable members are required to be delivered to the secretary for placing in the order paper. And these motions have duly been submitted and published on the order paper below the line, as you can see. Now, for the honorable members, in terms of the motions without notice, as recorded in Rule 150, I would like to inform that Rule 150, motions of condolences, motions of congratulatory nature were dealt with by the programming authority, and those motions where an agreement was reached includes the motion written by Honorable America, Honorable Leke, Honorable Bosman, Honorable Christians, Honorable Brankes, Honorable Leke again, Honorable Dagmo, and Honorable Barnes. All of those motions were submitted and agreed to by the programming authority, and they are now submitted to this House. Are there any objections to these motions?
No.
Honorable members? No objections. Agreed to. I now wish to put to the House that the motions that have just been agreed to would appear in the minutes and also in Hansard with the names of the individual members, as if the members read them in the House here with us. Honorable members, I will now afford an opportunity in terms of Rule 150, subsection 2, for the honorable members to read the motions that were not agreed to or those that were not submitted to in terms of the programming authority, as I've read earlier. We have 30 minutes to do this. I wish to request that the honorable members who wish to speak indicate that they wish to do so. Honorable Kama.
Am I moving the motion, Speaker?
Yes, if you wish so, sir. We've got 30 minutes, so you can enjoy.
Yes, a motion without notice that the House commends the police for arrests made to round up senior DA members in the Western Cape as suspects on various charges from money abuse to murder, and congratulates the National Prosecuting Authority. The suspects are, amongst others, Cederberg's Joseph Farmer, Stellenbosch killers of DA Cameron Mtago, and Atlantis Nora Hos, all being DA members and leaders. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes, there are objections.
Object.
Speaker.
Are there any objections to the
Khama.
motion itself? Are there any objections to the motion itself?
Objection.
No objection. Is there objection? Thank you. Honorable member, the motion will be recorded in the order paper. Thank you. I now request the Honorable Brenkes, followed by Honorable Makamba Botja.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice and ask the House that we collectively pray for the recovery of my teacher, that is Mufti Muhammad Taha Karan from the Strand community. He is very ill at the moment. He is not doing well. We pray for his health and a speedy recovery. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
No.
Are there any objections to the motion itself? No objections. Motion agreed to. Honorable members, I recognize. Okay, I don't see another. Honorable Makamba Botja.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that the City of Cape Town's proposal to turn Kings David's Mobile Golf Course into an opportunity for social housing. We further hope this is not part of the cheap politicking by the DA-led City of Cape Town with the hope of scoring few votes using weak public stance, only to revert back to their true colors of prioritizing the interest of white people after the local government elections. The government of the DA in the Western Cape has intentionally avoided any real means to address the special apartheid legacy in the province. All they do is to come with proposals which never materialize. Our people need social and affordable housing opportunities in the land closer to economic opportunities, and they need it now. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Makamba Botja. There is an objection in the House from the chamber. The objection will be recorded and the motion will be recorded in the order paper. Thank you, Honorable Makamba Botja. Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that this House congratulates the ANC for its tireless fight for gender equality in our society, which has resulted in the advancement of women also in this House, including Honorable Bartman, who has been appointed as DA Deputy Chief Whip, and further urges the Premier to urgently address the shortage of enough women in the provincial cabinet. I so move.
Objection.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Thank you, Honorable Bartman. The objection has been noted. Honorable Nkondlo, the motion will be recorded in the order paper. I now request the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC without notice that the House notes the numerous attempts launched by individuals to divide this province and establish an independent country in the Western Cape, separate from South Africa.
Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, that's not the motion that you submitted. Is that a new one now?
Okay, just hold on. Is the other one? Regarding the NA Portfolio Committee?
I don't want to read it for you, sir.
Is it about the NA Portfolio Committee?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Will be time to get to the ones wanting to have a separate country in the Western Cape. Would there be time to get to that? Okay, let me just move on to this one. Apologies for that, Speaker, and to members. But I would like to move without notice on behalf of the ANC that this House congratulates the National Assembly Portfolio Committee for the work done on the expropriation bill and the public hearings which will be held over the next weeks, and urge the public to participate, to make inputs and help finalize this piece of transformative legislation which will fundamentally assist with land redistribution in our province and country. I so move.
Objection.
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
Objection. Thievery.
Itself, objection. Noted, honorable members. The objection has been noted. Honorable Dagmo, the motion will be recorded in the order paper. Are there any further motions? None. All right. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, that concludes the motions, and that also concludes the business for the day. I then request the honorable members to rise as we proceed with the procession. That is now the end of the session. The House is adjourned. Have a great evening. Thank you.